two in the back of an ambulance speeding westbound on I-10 toward Lafayette General. He began coughing with retching, and the paramedic helped him onto his side to clear his airway of mucus and regurgitation. "What the hell happened?" coughed Kenneth. "The factory caught fire," the paramedic said. "What?" asked Kenneth, horrified. "Is everyone all right?" The paramedic did not answer him, but continued to check Kenneth's vitals and put the mask back over his mouth and nose so that his lungs could fill with oxygen. The emergency room at Lafayette General was filled with victims of the Bender factory fire, who were triaged and treated in order of severity. No, you'll see her first," Kenneth demanded, as the orderly began to lead him to a station in front of Patsy Bordelon. "You have head injuries. She has burns," the orderly corrected him. "What? I don't have," Kenneth said, then passed out again. When he came to, sunlight was streaming through the window. The room was semi-private. Big Jake occupied the other bed. They jokingly called him Big Jake. The man was just over 5 feet tall but very stocky, his back and arms a mass of rippling muscle. "Heck, we're so lucky to be alive!" Big Jake groaned when he realized Kenneth was awake. "Uh-huh," Kenneth groaned, not feeling very lucky. "I heard some of us died," Big Jake continued, and then Kenneth heard Big Jake sobbing softly. "Oh, God," Kenneth groaned, mourning the loss of his friends and coworkers. "Dude, what the heck happened?" Big Jake asked. "Man, I don't know. I was getting a Coke out of the machine, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up in an ambulance," Kenneth admitted. 4 days later, Lafayette General released Kenneth K. Big Jake had broken his back and would be in the hospital for several more days. Ella K., Kenneth's wife, drove the 60 miles from Bender to Lafayette to pick up her husband. The tall blonde let him know she wasn't too happy about having to make that long trip. Kenneth sat down next to her and wondered, not for the first time, why he had married such a strident woman. Yes, she was beautiful, or had been 19 years ago, behind the counter at McDonald's. But beauty alone was not enough to justify her attitude or her behavior. Kenneth agreed to do the right thing and marry the scared and angry Ella Moore and give the child growing in her womb a loving home. He set aside his dream of becoming a professional baseball player, along with becoming a rock star bass player, and took a job at the Bender mattress factory. When he learned that the midnight to 8 shifts paid 20 cents more an hour, he jumped at the chance. No, look, the more we can save, honey, the sooner we can get out of this crummy apartment and get our own place for you, me, and Kenny, Kenneth said, rubbing his wife's hand. His wife's swollen belly. Ella gave birth to a beautiful blonde baby girl whom she named Jadia Ann K. Jadia? Kenneth frowned at the strange name. Yeah, see, I was in high school with this girl. Her mom named her Verisa, instead of Theresa. And I remember thinking it was cool that her mom loved her enough to give her baby her own name, I mean, there's like 100 Ellas all over the place. But how many Verisas do you know? Explained Ella. Jadia, asked Kenneth again. Where the hell did that come from? Yeah, it's like Nadia, but with a J, said Ella. Kenneth sighed, knowing it would do no good to argue with Ella. He had made up his mind. Even before Jadia started walking, Ella announced that they were pregnant again. Fine, but I'll name this one, Kenneth insisted. Uh-huh, Ella said, having no intention of letting him name her baby. Jalissa Amy K. also came out sporting thick blonde hair and her mother's wicked blue eyes. Jalissa? Asked Kenneth, frowning. My mom's name is Melissa, so it's like Melissa but with a J, Ella explained, then continued to coo and croon to the wrinkled baby. Sounds like an Enger's name, Bernice K., Kenneth's mother, whispered aloud to him. Kenneth had scrimped and saved, despite Ella's ability to spend extravagantly, and had managed to scrape together a tidy sum for his dream of a home of his own for his family. Okay, you can buy it, but I'm not going to live here, Ella growled when Kenneth showed her the house they could afford. It's a starter house, he patiently tried to explain. I have enough saved that I can buy it outright, and then we fix it up and sell it, and put that money toward a bigger house. But Ella decided that the bigger house would come now, not later, and forced Kenneth to put the tidy sum toward a much larger home. At 14% interest, the mortgage easily swallowed more than half of his salary. As the 3 women and Kenneth settled into their home, Ella announced that they were going to be blessed again with another baby. Damn it, honey, Kenneth whined. I can barely keep us fed, and now we're going to have another baby? Jadia, 6, and Jalissa, 5, decided they hated JC Alice K and tormented the little brunette infant as often as they could. Kenneth didn't even ask about the baby's name or parentage. Both he and Ella were blonde, and both had light blue eyes. There had only been one other brunette in Kenneth's family tree in the last 100 years, and no one was quite sure of Oliver K's parentage either. But even Oliver had light blue eyes, not JCK's deep brown. Very little was known about Ella's lineage. Most of her relatives had lost contact with each other years ago, so it was possible that the brown hair and brown eyes were a recessive gene somewhere in Ella's genealogy. But JC was, from the very day of her birth, a daddy's girl. Ella was content to take care of her 2 daughters, leaving JC's care to her father, and leaving Kenneth wondering about many things he dared not voice. JC's protection to her father as well. Mom, he hit me, screamed Jalissa at the top of her lungs after Kenneth spanked her. I caught her about to drop this on JC's head, Kenneth explained, holding up the large ceramic piggy bank. I wasn't doing it, Jalissa lied. I was just showing him while I was sleeping, Kenneth scoffed, and Jalissa had the finesse to blush at being caught in such an obvious lie. Kenneth didn't realize that Jalissa referred to him as he and not dad. He didn't pick up on the fact that Jadia did the same, calling him he or him, but never dad or any other term of affiliation. Ella, however, did, and smiled every time her 2 angels did this. 19 years later, cruising down I-10 in his battered Ford F-150 pickup truck. Kenneth wasn't allowed to get into her BMW, even though he had paid for it. He wondered again why he had married her. She was still a beautiful woman, still had the 38D breasts, the 30-inch waist, and the 34 hips. She still had the long, smooth legs and her predilection for short skirts and shorts, the same flawless skin and honey blonde hair, the same pale blue eyes, and the same dazzling smile with which she rarely aleened him. But the inside did not reflect the outside beauty at all. So she spat out the first words she'd spoken since he'd climbed into the passenger side of the truck. I guess you'll be sitting around all day now that you're out of a job, huh? I'm not out of a job, he protested. Oh, come on, Kenneth. The hecking factory's gone, yelled Ella at him. What? Are you going to stay in the ashes? No. Big Eddie came to the hospital and told us they will pay us, even if we don't work, until they open the new factory, Kenneth protested. So you think you're going to sit around hecking up all my fun? Ella growled. Hecking fun? Asked Kenneth, as he slammed on the brakes inside his garage. If you think I'm going to stop going out just because you're home, you've got another hecking thing coming. She shooed him as she walked into the house. Wait, what? Asked Kenneth, sure he hadn't heard her right. You heard me, asshole, she snapped at him, then smiled brightly. Oh, I guess you didn't know, huh? She added with an even wider grin. Well, now that it's out in the open, I guess I don't have to pretend anymore. Wait, what are you talking about? Asked Kenneth. Oh, come on, Kenneth. Grow up, huh, Tonto? Ella let out a giggle. Everyone realized that years ago. You're at work. I'm out. Kenneth's head ached, and his vision was blurry as he listened to his wife recount her many infidelities. Behind her, his 2 angels were laughing at him. JC, however, looked absolutely mortified as she listened to her mother berate her father. Then pack up your things and take your 2 precious little bitches with you, Kenneth finally shouted. Oh no, honey, Ella laughed out loud. No, that's not the way things go. This is a no-fault state. That means I get half of everything plus custody of the kids. That means you get to pay the mortgage, car payments, and child support. Oh, and you can kiss your precious little angel goodbye if I never let you see her again. Under Kenneth's kick, and he stepped into her room with a determined look on his face. Go ahead, fool. Divorce me, I dare you, Ella had taunted earlier. Now, if we're done, I have a date with Sissel. See ya. Kenneth had been dumbfounded as she walked up the stairs, pulling her cell phone out of her purse. Hey, Cease. Yeah, dumbass is home. Can you come pick me up in about 30? Ella said as she closed the door to the master bedroom. Dad, I swear I didn't know about it, whispered JC, sobbing as she hugged her father tightly. Honey, it'll be okay, Kenneth whispered, hugging the 12-year-old girl just as tightly. It's gonna be okay, he reassured her. Hecking nuts, laughed Jalissa as she came out of the kitchen, dragging her huge bulk. Kenneth smiled brightly as a car pulled up in front of the house, ghetto music blaring. "See ya!" Ella shouted cheerfully and smirked when Kenneth wagged his finger at her. "Uh-huh, like that's gonna happen to you again," she teased, lifting the hem of her skirt to show him that she wasn't wearing panties. "Oh, you couldn't get panties big enough for that huge ass of yours?" Kenneth smirked. For a moment, Ella was stunned. Kenneth wasn't supposed to talk back. He never did. Then she looked at him with hatred. "I should have Cecil come over here and beat the crap out of you," she hissed hatefully. "I wouldn't recommend it if I were you," he said easily. "Asshole," she spat, unable to think of anything else to say. "Never again. But hurry up. Don't keep your nut-ugger waiting," Kenneth said and turned back to the computer screen. The door slammed shut, and Kenneth shook his head sadly. 2 more clicks of the mouse, and all of Ella's credit cards were paid off. Balances paid in full. He then increased the amount of her mortgage and car insurance and reduced the deductibles on both. The increased premiums were paid out of a secret bank account Ella had opened. Kenneth knew about her account, had known about it for several years, but since she only paid into it between $300 and $400 a month, he saw no reason to make a fuss. It took him a little longer to open a new bank account in his and his mother's names. He wanted his children to be well taken care of, even though, according to Ella, he wasn't the father of any of them. He smiled as he transferred the $42,580 from Ella's secret account to his new account. Finally, he sighed, sat down, and picked up the phone. "Hi, Mom," he said. 5 minutes later, Kenneth came up the stairs. Jalissa's door was the first one on the left, so he knocked on it hard. "What?" barked Jalissa insolently. "Open the door," Kenneth ordered. "Go away," she barked back. "Okay," Kenneth said and tested the knob. "Beat it, Tonto." Jalissa laughed as she rattled the doorknob closed. "Uh-huh," Kenneth said and took a step back. Jalissa screamed in terror as her door splintered under Kenneth's kick, and he stepped into her room with a determined look on his face. Inward. "I said, open the door, and I meant, open the door," Kenneth growled. "Now get your fat arse up and get in the car. Now!" "You can't tell me what to do," shouted the 17-year-old, still terrified. Kenneth yanked her out of bed by a handful of her greasy hair, slapped her face twice, and calmly said, "I'm not kidding. Get your fat, lazy ass down to the car now." Jadia didn't even wait for her father to knock on the door. She was a coward who hid behind her mother or behind Jalissa. She ran down the stairs and climbed into the back seat of her mother's BMW. JC watched fearfully as her father approached. "Go ahead and get in the car," Kenneth told her quietly. "Yes, sir," said JC. "Wait until I tell Mom," Jalissa squealed as she climbed into the back seat of the car. "Heck your mother, okay, Jalissa? Heck your mother, okay? You need me to spell it out for you? I don't give a shit what you tell your mother." Kenneth spat as he started his wife's car. "Dad," said JC quietly as they pulled up in front of Bernice and Melvin Kay's house. "Yes, honey," Kenneth asked. "Please take care of Pebbles," pleaded JC in her soft-as-a-whisper voice. "Damn it, I forgot about," Kenneth sighed. "Okay, I'll make sure she's okay," Kenneth promised. Pebbles was JC's cat. She had had the animal since she was 9 years old. She had named him after the Flintstones cartoon. Because she loved the cat so much, Gita and Jalissa were constantly trying to hurt him. Because of this, the animal was wary of everyone except JC. "Wait, what does that mean?" dared Jadia to ask. "I know you will." JC smiled brightly at her father. "Thanks, Dad," Kenneth shouted as the girls trotted toward the house. Kenneth drove to Huval's Texaco and bought 2 5-gallon drums, then filled them with gasoline. "You might want to put some newspaper down," the clerk suggested, as Kenneth loaded the 2 cans into the trunk of the expensive car. "Heck it," Kenneth smiled. Kenneth returned to the house, located the box they used to take the cat to Dr. Duper's office for her annual vaccinations, and entered the house. As usual, Pebbles was nowhere in sight and did not respond to Kenneth's calls. Finally, he pulled out a can of cat food and uncapped it. He dropped the smelly contents into one of Ella's grandmother's china plates and waited patiently. Finally, the smell took over, and Pebbles came out from behind the couch to investigate. "Gotcha, you rotten beast!" Kenneth grinned and stuffed both the cat and the plate into the carrier. Jalissa snorted in irritation when her mother's cell phone went straight to voicemail again. Mom, call me. I'm at Grandma's house. Dad's gone crazy. This is real. Call me, she whispered urgently. You don't need to whisper. I know you're calling your mother, Bernice blurted out, startling Jalissa. Why do I have to be here? Snapped Jalissa at the woman. I'm 17. I'm old enough to take care of myself. Yes, I'm 18, Jadia repeated, placing herself behind Jalissa. Goodbye, Bernice greeted. You don't want to be here? Then I sure don't want you here. The two girls smirked as they headed for the front door. How do you plan to get home? Asked Bernice. It's 9 miles, and I know neither of you has ever walked that far in your lives. No, but you can take us, Jalissa ordered. I could, but I'm not going to, Bernice said, and began to bring out bowls for the stew she was cooking. Then how are we going to? Jalissa shrieked. I'll be damned, but I don't care, Bernice said, and set the 3 bowls on the table. JC, Melvin, dinner's ready. Excuse me, Melvin ordered as he nudged Jalissa away. Where's mine? Finally asked Jalissa as JC took a seat at the table. I guess yours is wherever you go, remember? You're old enough to take care of yourselves. Goodbye, Bernice said, waving her hand. I hate you, Jalissa yelled at her grandmother. That's nice, dear, smiled Bernice. Goodbye. Kenneth punched a few holes in the gas tank of the BMW, and after a long moment, a few more in the gas tank of his truck. He then brought up the first of the 5-gallon gas cans and started in the bedroom he shared with Ella. The bed got a good splash, as did the dresser and low vanity. He sighed looking at the 42-inch plasma TV, shrugged, picked up one of her ridiculous figurines, and threw it against the expensive TV. His stomach actually hurt as he walked into JC's room and began dousing her bedroom with gasoline. He saw a small framed photograph and picked it up. It was a picture of JC and him posing with the minnow she had caught the first time he took her fishing. He carried it downstairs and put it on top of the box. Inside the cage, Pebbles, who had already finished his snack, began to howl. He went back upstairs and gleefully doused Jadia and Jalissa's rooms with the remainder of the first can of gasoline. Then he tossed the canister onto Jalissa's bed. The second can he emptied over all the furniture downstairs. Then he took the box and the small photograph and left the house. He left the box and the photograph on the edge of the driveway and walked to the side of his house. He positioned the sprinkler and locked it in place, directing the stream toward Ray's house. On the other side, he did the same, making sure to block the stream toward Debbie's house. Then he smiled as he looked at the expensive eyesore that Ella insisted they buy, the house he didn't want, didn't like, but had called home for the past 14 years. He opened the front door, lit the fireplace match, and dropped it on the gasoline-soaked oriental rug. Then he closed the door, walked to the edge of the driveway, and waited. By the time the first fire truck arrived, it was too late. The house was nothing but a ball of flames. Ray's house had started to burn, even though Kenneth had been careful to put the sprinkler on it, so the first fire engine was tasked with keeping the flames away from Ray's house. Debbie's house was a little farther away, so the second fire crew helped the first by taking care of Ray's house. What happened? Asked Sheriff Dick Davis, as Kenneth stood on the opposite side of the street, watching his home burn. Kenneth took a deep breath and replied, Just cleaning house, Sheriff. Just cleaning house. Street, holding a violently shaking box and a small framed photograph. We burned it down, Kenneth shrugged. I couldn't afford it anymore, so my wife Ella and I decided that if we burned it down, we'd collect the insurance and buy a smaller house, which we could afford. You? You started this fire? Deliberately? Asked Sheriff Dick Davis, making sure Deputy Sheriff Orville Jackson was close enough to hear Kenneth's confession. Yeah, shrugged Kenneth. I took the brats to my mom's for dinner, and then I went to Huival's and bought a couple of cans of gas and spread it all over the place. Oh, and I fixed the car, too. The hecking payments were killing us, Damn shame, though. I totally forgot about the truck. See, it's paid for. So when do you think we'll get the insurance money? Sir, where is your wife? Dick asked. I don't know. She said she didn't want to see it, So a friend of hers came to get her, Kenneth said and set the box down. Pebbles was beginning to tire his arm. Sir, put your hands behind your back, please, Dick said. Freaking smart! Jadia complained as she and Jalissa walked down Highway 19 toward home. We could have waited until after lunch. he would have come for us. He wasn't coming back to get us, Jalissa scoffed. We would have been stuck until Mom came looking for us. How much further do we have to go? Asked Jadia. Look around you, Jadia, Jalissa said, indicating her surroundings. Does it look close to our house? I'm going back, Jadia decided. Jalissa also wanted to return to her grandmother's house, but her pride wouldn't let her. Almost as if he was glad to be here, Orville observed as they looked at Kenneth K. Aha! Did you figure out what to do with his hecking cat? Dick asked. Uh-huh, and here it is. Orville smiled as his sister walked into the station. Hi, Barney Fife, smiled Wilhelmina Jackson, as she handed her brother 2 small pills. I would have thought a big cop like ours would know where to get phenobarbital. Yes, call my little sister, smiled Orville. Thank you, sis. Uh-huh. Now where's that handsome Eric Green? Willie asked, looking around. Night off, smiled Dick, but I'll be sure to tell him you were looking for him. Better. My dog is having seizures because I gave him his medication. The least you could do is order that fine-ass boy to take me out, smiled Willie. He turned around to leave the station. And I'm not talking about McDonald's either. It better be like Manny's or Touch of Sicily's, you hear me? He shouted as he walked out of the small building. Do you think we should tell him Eric is gay? Dick asked Orville. Really? Asked Orville with wide eyes. No, but he's scared to death of that girl, smiled Dick. Now, Barney Fife, how are you going to shove that down that cat's throat? Watch and learn, Orville said smugly. He took the 2 pills and crushed them with the butt of his regulation revolver. He then took 3 small containers of coffee creamer and emptied the contents into a small dish. The crushed pills were emptied into the dish. Dick smiled in satisfaction as Orville carried his concoction to the small cupboard where they had stored the box. Uh-huh, Dick smirked as Orville returned, pressing his bloodied hand against his chest. Do you have any better ideas? Orville burst out. Uh-huh, Lafayette Animal Control is on its way, Dick said. That's why he's the sheriff and you're not, said Deputy Jake Stevens as he applied some antiseptic to Orville's bleeding hand. Go get your granddaughter, Bernice ordered Melvin as Jadia sat at the table, eating the reheated stew. The Braves are up by 1. It's the top of the 8th, Melvin argued. Go away. I guarantee nothing will happen in the 10 minutes you'll be gone, Bernice said. I'll watch it for you and tell you what happened, JC offered. Uh-huh, tell you what, woman, you go get her, Melvin said, already putting on his shoes. Melvin, you know I hate driving at night, smiled Bernice as her husband obediently prepared to do her bidding. Uh-huh, on 3, 1, 2, 3, Melvin said. Go Braves. JC and Melvin cheered as Melvin opened the door. What fools you are, smiled Bernice. Melvin saw Jalissa sitting on the shoulder of Highway 19 crouched down. He smiled brightly. She hadn't even made it 2 miles before she gave up. He made a 180-degree turn and stopped in front of her. He rolled down the passenger window. Get in, he ordered. Jalissa said nothing, stood up, and got into the car. Melvin smiled with slightly wicked satisfaction as Jalissa wiped her tear-streaked face, trying not to let him notice. Grandma's heating up your stew, Melvin said quietly as he pulled up in front of the house. Thank you, Jalissa whispered. Cecil was not amused when Ella's MasterCard and Visa were declined. Grumbling, he pulled out 3 crumpled $20 bills and placed them on the small tray the waiter held out for him. Hey, the bill is 59.98 cents, the waiter said quietly. Yes, Cecil spat. That's 320s, isn't it? Ah, yes, sir. Very good, sir, the waiter said firmly and walked away. They expect a tip, Ella hissed. They can expect shit. Doesn't mean I have to give it to them, does it? Cecil spat. Well, I was going to suggest we take this to the Hilton and Towers, but for some reason my cards are. Ella said, smiling to herself as the waiter dropped Cecil's change on the table in front of him. Thank you, Cecil shooed the man. Oh, my pleasure, sir, smiled the waiter, as Cecil motioned to count the change and leave the penny for the waiter. What are you saying? Asked Cecil as they waited for the valet to bring their car around. I guess I'm saying, I know I promised you some pussy, but Ella said. The back seat works, Cecil said, and yanked the door open for her. Tell Animal Control that's my daughter's cat. Her name is JC, and here's the phone number where they can reach her, Kenneth said, as Orville, his hand wrapped in bandages, made the rounds of the cells. What? Said Orville incredulously. The cat belongs to me, repeated Kenneth. You knew an hour ago and you didn't say shit? Orville asked, his voice growing in volume. It wasn't a problem an hour ago, Kenneth shrugged. I'll call her, Orville blurted out and stomped off. I told you, I really think he's having fun back there. Dick grinned as Orville grumbled under his breath. Uh-huh. Any sign of your wife? Orville asked. No. He says he doesn't know the name of her friend other than Cecil. Dick shrugged. Look, I bet we find out he not only knows the son of a bitch's full name, but also his phone number, his address, his mother's phone number and address, and what size shoes the son of a bitch wears, Orville spat. How's the hand? Dick smiled. The back seat worked for Cecil's enjoyment, but not for Ella's. She knew it was nothing more than a hole for Cecil to use for his own pleasure, and usually that was enough for her when he used it in a comfortable bed with a shower nearby. Oh yeah, Cecil sighed and pumped his seed into her nearly dry pussy. Hell yeah, that's some killer shit. She tried to sit up, but Cecil pushed her back down. Where the heck are you going? He spat. We had sex. You came. Take me home, she replied. Bitch, $60 and you just want to have sex? Cecil spat. Aw no, those lips better wrap around this real quick. You know I don't, Ella hissed, indignant. Now you're talking, bitch, Cecil said, and backhanded her. Overtime? Bernice groaned. Haven't we suffered enough? Now they're going to make us see even more of this? On three, Melvin said to JC, 1, 2, 3. Go Braves, JC and Melvin cheered. Jadia and Jalissa curled up on the sofa bed in the living room, far enough away from the den so they wouldn't be disturbed by the baseball game, but close enough to hear JC and Melvin's shouts of encouragement. How come JC gets her own room here? Jadia asked Jalissa. And we have to sleep on this shitty couch. Because she's the favorite, Jalissa scoffed. Hecking ass kisser. I hate her, said Jadia. I hate him, Jalissa replied. I hate him too, agreed Jadia. I hope Mommy beats the shit out of you, you insensitive idiot, Jalissa said forcefully. Yeah, did you hear when she called it that? Jadia laughed. Ella stepped out of the car and stared in disbelief at the charred and smoldering remains of her home. What the heck happened? She asked, not really expecting an answer. Close the door, huh? Cecil ordered. What? Asked Ella, looking at him incredulously. Close the door, I'm late, Cecil ordered. You're just going to leave me here? Ella asked. What? What the heck do you want me to do, huh? Take you home with me? Cecil scoffed. Yeah, I can see my baby mama be under that shit. Miss K? Asked Officer Becky Zima. Ah, look at this shit. Hey, officer, you're gonna move that car, you hear me? Cecil ordered. Let's see some identification, Becky ordered him. Now, are you Mrs. Ella K? Officer, what happened to my house? Ella asked. Please answer the question, Becky spat. Are you Ella K? Yes, that's right, Ella agreed. Now, what happened to my house? Ella K, put your hands behind your back. Ella K, you have the right to remain silent. Becky began the ritual. Ella was in a daze as she was booked, fingerprinted, searched. She woke up enough to call Becky Zima a dyke, and then put in a cell with 3 prostitutes who chatted and laughed with each other in Spanish. Arraignment is tomorrow morning, Becky patiently explained to a livid Ella K. At that time, your bail will be set. Until then, why don't you try to get some sleep? Why don't you kiss my ass, you hecking carpet-eating dyke? Ella hissed. In the morning, Ella was assigned to Donald Pellichet as a pro bono representative. Donald kept an impassive face as she protested her innocence and glared at her with hatred when Donald explained that her husband had implicated her in his for-profit arson scheme. Really? Asked Kenneth to Sophia Kutra, his own pro bono advocate. You mean that's illegal? But I was just doing what my wife told me to do. You see, she wears the pants in the family. You can ask anyone. They'll tell you Ella rules. Son of a bitch, yelled Ella to Kenneth when they finally saw each other inside the St. Elizabeth Parish Courthouse. Kenneth smiled at Ella as Donald and a bailiff forcibly restrained her. You son of a bitch, I'm gonna kill you, yelled Ella as she was led into the courtroom to face Judge Jack Mallinson. Stop being so nice, Kenneth whispered to Sophia Kutra as the lawyer actively demanded that her client be released without bail. What? She asked, dumbfounded. I said, stop being so nice. Let me sit where I am. Kenneth said, and finally looked at the ADA. Adam was quick to agree that Kenneth should remain a guest of the state, and Kenneth was transferred to DeGard Prison to await trial. Okay now, Mr. K, what's really going on? Asked Sophia. And yes, this is being recorded. The system sucks, Kenneth said calmly. My wife goes on a bender, and I'm supposed to sit by and put up with it. I ask her for a divorce. She gets the house, the car, the kids, and I get the bills. She barely works, but I have to bust my ass to give her all the stuff, and so bad, huh? And now you mean it was my idea to burn down our house so I can rot behind bars while she and her lover or lovers, damn, I don't know how many she has, can go to the Bahamas with my money? No. Mrs. Kutra, leave me behind bars. If I don't work, she won't get a penny of my money, will she? Yeah, the system sucks, agreed Sophia. My first husband had sex with everyone who walked by, didn't care if it was a boy or a girl, while I worked my ass off to put him and me through law school. As soon as he graduated, he told me he'd finally found the true love of his life, and I was still paying all the bills I'd racked up when we were married. It sucks, agreed Kenneth. Yeah, but there's a bright side to all that, Sophia smiled. I met my husband thanks to that asshole leaving me. And his one true love? He turned out to be HIV positive. Ouch, smiled Kenneth. Okay, Mr. K, I'll see you in a couple of months, I guess. Sophia shrugged and stood up. Donald Pellichet was more than happy to discharge Ella K as a client. She insisted that he did not give her priority over his other clients. Of course not. You can count on that, he replied dryly. They're paying, bitch, he muttered after another raucous confrontation. Dick Davis smiled sympathetically as Donald walked out of the police station. I don't know who you're going to contact, but it's not me, Donald warned Dick. Jesse Johnson walked in, listened to Ella's explanation, and convinced himself he could get something out of her blonde beauty. He pressed her for information about her secret account. Damn, there's at least 40,000 in it now, he said. Get me the heck out of here. Jesse entered the information into his laptop, deleted the user ID field, and tried again. Mrs. K, I don't know how to tell you this, but, Jesse said after a long moment. Let me see that, Ella barked, digging her fingers into the keyboard and screaming in rage when she realized the money was no longer there. That little son of a bitch, she growled. And of course, since the house is in both of your names, Jesse continued. What house? Ella yelled. The son of a bitch burned it to the ground. What I mean, Mrs. K, is that you have retained me as your attorney, but not as a pro bono attorney. Mr. Pellichet was your court-appointed attorney, Jesse said. My services cost $350 an hour. You intend to pay me, don't you? Great, Ella sighed. Get that lazy son of a bitch back in here. It's been a pleasure, Jesse lied and left the room. Come on, princess, Becky intoned, leading Ella back to her cell. I'm going to make you mine. You hear me, punk? Taunted Jamal Westinghouse as Kenneth sat on his bunk, reading Brave New World for the umpteenth time. No, thank you, Kenneth said calmly, but have a good day. Kenneth continued to read, his eyes scanning the familiar words. It was his escape, the only way to keep his mind off the chaos his life had become. He heard the murmurs and laughter from other inmates, the heavy footsteps of the guards patrolling the hallways, but he stayed focused on the book in his hands. Back in her cell, Ella fumed. She paced back and forth, cursing under her breath. The other women in the cell watched her warily, not daring to interrupt her tirade. She replayed the events in her mind, the money that had vanished, the house that was now a pile of ash, and her husband's infuriating calmness. Ella's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the cell door opening. Becky Zima stepped in, a look of pity mixed with annoyance on her face. You got a visitor, Kay, she said, motioning for Ella to follow. Ella walked out of the cell, her mind racing with possibilities. Maybe it was Cecil, finally coming to bail her out. Or perhaps Jesse had managed to pull some strings. She was led into a small, sterile room with a table and 2 chairs. She sat down, tapping her fingers impatiently on the table. The door opened, and to her shock, Kenneth walked in. He looked different, more composed, almost as if the chaos had given him a sense of clarity. What are you doing here? Ella snapped. Kenneth sat down across from her, his expression unreadable. I came to tell you that I'm done, he said simply. Done, Ella echoed, her voice rising. What the hell does that mean? It means I'm done with you, with this life, Kenneth replied. I'm filing for divorce. You can keep the ashes of the house and the memories. I'm moving on. Ella stared at him, her mouth open in shock. You can't do this to me, she hissed. I'll make your life a living hell. Kenneth stood up, leaning over the table to look her in the eye. "You've already done that, Ella. Now it's your turn to live with the consequences." He turned and walked out, leaving Ella seething with rage. Back in his cell, Kenneth felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He had faced his demons, confronted the chaos head-on, and now he was free. He picked up his book again, but this time the words seemed lighter, more hopeful. He was ready to start a new chapter. "I'm talking to you," Jamal shouted, tearing the book from Kenneth's hands. Kenneth's first punch crushed Jamal's larynx, cutting off his breath. The second punch landed straight on Jamal's testicles. Kenneth then calmly stomped on Jamal's head until his body stopped twitching. "Any of you think you're going to stick your dick where it's not wanted?" Kenneth asked, picking up his book. "Hey, man, you don't have to come at us like that, huh?" one of the other men protested. "Call me a geeger, huh? I didn't do anything to you, did I? And you didn't do anything for me either, huh? Where were you when homie told me I was his new bitch? Or when he got his hands on my stuff, huh?" Kenneth added. "Damn, I thought you had it, you know?" muttered the man. "What the heck?" bellowed Captain Charles Villot as he saw Jamal Westinghouse's lifeless body on the ground. "He slipped and fell, I think," Kenneth shrugged. "Damn, that's convenient," Charles grumbled. Ella was leaving the courtroom with 5 other women detained by the police when Kenneth K., heavily shackled, was led in. "What's he doing here?" Ella asked Becky Zima. "They're not going to let him go, are they?" "I'm not sure," Becky replied. "I heard he stomped another prisoner to death," she shrugged. Ella glanced back as the 3 armed officers escorted Kenneth into the living room. "Him? You've got to be kidding. He's a total wimp." Ella chuckled. No, you must be thinking of someone else." "Oh, no, ma'am," Bernice replied. "I'm not letting you go to Northside." "Why not?" Jadia asked, taking a huge bite of her chicken salad sandwich. "Jalissa and I went there," she added. "And look how you two turned out," Melvin quipped, earning a playful slap from Bernice. "No, ma'am, we're going to St. Thomas. It's a good school," Bernice said firmly. "Haha, you'll have to wear those dorky uniforms," Jalissa teased. "There's nothing wrong with those uniforms," Bernice insisted. "But Grandma, we can't afford that school," JC complained. "Don't worry about it. Leave it to me," Bernice assured her. When do you think Mom will come looking for us?" Jalissa asked. "They have to know she had nothing to do with the house fire, right? And your father will be out soon, too," Bernice reminded them. "Well, how long has it been?" Jadia asked, finishing her sandwich. "Almost a month now," Melvin confirmed. 4 long weeks of I'm bored and there's nothing to do, and when's my mom coming? And hush, but Grandpa is right, Bernice interjected. "What?" Jadia asked, looking at her grandmother. "You and Jalissa don't go to school anymore." "I know, I went to graduations," Bernice said. "Yes, they reward mediocrity now," Melvin said, earning another playful slap. "So do you think it's possible for either of us to show some initiative? To actually go and get a job somewhere?" Bernice asked. "A what?" Jalissa asked. "Work. You know, what people do every day to make money. You may have heard about it," Melvin explained. "It was all over the papers. I even heard some people on TV talking about jobs." "You're kidding, right?" Jalissa teased. "No, I'm not kidding," Bernice said. "I've asked them to help out around the house. I'm not running a hotel here with free food and clothes." But neither of them bothers to lift a finger. "What about her?" Jadia shrieked, pointing at JC. "Huh? What about her?" Bernice asked, putting her hand on JC's shoulder. "Who helped Grandpa cut the grass yesterday? And he helped me change the oil in the car the day before," Melvin added. "And he poured most of the oil on himself," Jalissa remarked. "It doesn't matter. At least he was trying. At least he was cooperating. At least he was doing his part," Melvin said. "So you two have... Oh, what do you think is fair, Melvin? 1 week? 2 weeks? 2 weeks to find a job, a real we'll pay you money to work here job, or give Grandma Moore a call and see if you all can stay with her," Bernice said. "What? Are you kidding me?" Jadia and Jalissa shrieked in unison. "No, I'm afraid not," Bernice said. "Now, would anyone like another sandwich?" "I'll take one," Melvin offered. "No, honey, you're not a growing teenager." Bernice kissed the top of his bald head. "Can I have another, please?" JC asked, holding up her plate. "Sure, honey," Bernice smiled. "Can I have another one, please?" Jalissa teased JC. "Oh, no, everyone be very careful. There's a ferocious animal on the loose," Melvin warned, feeling pebbles rub against his leg. "Grandpa, it's not." JC giggled as the pebbles brushed against her bare leg. Now, one of you can get on the computer and start writing your resume, while the other searches the classifieds to see what you find. After an hour, you switch, Bernice instructed, laying the newspaper on the table. Jalissa and Jadia exchanged surprised looks. On the day of the trial of the state of Louisiana, VK&K, it was bitterly cold, and Kenneth was grateful for the coat his mother had bought him. Sophia and Donald wisely stood between Kenneth and Ella. All rise, the Honorable Harold Monroe now presiding, the sheriff announced. Ella smiled as Jadia and Jalissa's father entered the room. When Judge Monroe asked if everyone was present and willing to proceed, all parties agreed. Your Honor, if it please the court, Donald Pellichet began. Ella saw no glimmer of recognition, even when Donald insisted on using her maiden name and the names of her 3 children in his motion to try her and Kenneth separately. Harold Monroe did recognize Ella, although she was no longer the 19-year-old McDonald's employee he remembered. Ella had once been captivated by Harold Monroe's Mercedes-Benz Rolex watch and his confident demeanor, but that was years ago, and now she was just another face in a long line of women. None had ever received special treatment from him. In the interest of time and the state's budget, your motion is denied. Please proceed, Mr. Rich. Harold interrupted Donald and gestured to the ADA to begin his case. But I didn't do it, Ella shouted as Adam detailed how she and Kenneth allegedly planned to defraud Young Insurance Corporation of nearly $300,000 through arson. Counselor, control your client, Harold warned. Yes, Your Honor. Sorry, Your Honor, Donald said, placing a firm hand on Ella's leg. Despite his efforts, Ella's outbursts continued, leading to her eventual removal from the courtroom. Your Honor, my client does not contest the state's case, but asks for leniency. Remember, he was manipulated and coerced for years by the co-defendant, Donald argued. Sophia then addressed the court after Adam Rich concluded his arguments. Your Honor, I ask that my client be released. By her own admission, she had no part in this heinous act or the subsequent scam attempt, said Donald Pellichet. The court finds you guilty of aggravated arson under Article 4, subsection, Harold Monroe declared, noting Kenneth's unexpected smile at the 8 to 12-year sentence. Keep your nose clean, and you could be out in 5 or 6 years, he added. Sophia whispered and patted her client's hand affectionately. Bye, Dad, sobbed JC as Kenneth allowed himself a brief hug. Jadia and Jalissa didn't bother to attend the trial. Grandma Moore couldn't be bothered with such nonsense. She found it almost intolerable that at her age she was saddled with 2 spoiled teenagers and deeply resented Kenneth K. and his parents for not stepping up and taking care of the 2 brats. But as intolerable and inconvenient as it was, Ella's mother could not, in good conscience, refuse her own grandchildren. Maybe we should have looked a little harder, Jadia whispered to Jalissa. If you want to. You can, Jalissa scoffed, turning up the TV volume. No, I mean we have work. We could, do things, Jadia suggested. You can if you want. Screw her mom and dad, and screw that little brat JC too, Jalissa said. But I get bored sitting here all the time, Jadia complained. Then go do something, shrugged Jalissa. Melissa Moore burst into the small apartment, glaring at her 2 lazy, insolent granddaughters. It was one thing for them to be lazy and insolent with Kenneth K., whom she despised just because he was a man, but quite another for them to be lazy and insolent with her. Do you think one of you could get off your useless asses and come take this garbage out? She shouted. Okay, Jalissa complained, standing up. And you, Melissa barked at Jadia. Do you think you could do something with this mincemeat? Like what? Jadia asked, puzzled. Try cooking it. What do you think? Melissa asked. I've been on my feet all damn day busting my ass. Jadia panicked, having never cooked a meal in her life, and began sobbing in earnest. Oh, damn it, stop, Melissa yelled. Fine, but I better not hear an ew. I don't like this. What is this from you? You hear me? JC fit in perfectly with the other 8th graders at St. Thomas Aquinas. Her grades were good, and so was her attitude. No one thought it odd that she lived with her grandparents. There were 2 other children in similar situations in her class. When given the opportunity to step out of the shadow of her 2 older sisters, JC excelled in sports. Coach D. Campion was quick to contact Melvin K. and ask if she could enroll JC in junior varsity basketball. Sure, but wait until softball season. You've got a cannon arm, I promise, Melvin told the now excited coach. But I'm too short, JC argued. Nonsense, Coach D said. I saw you catch that rebound, and that girl is at least an inch taller than you. No matter where a person sat in the gym, they knew where Melvin K sat, and they knew that JCK was his granddaughter. Bounces were cheered, fouls were discussed or loudly whistled, and points were applauded. Sit down, Melvin. The people in the back can't see, Bernice said calmly. But did you see that? Shouted Melvin. That girl deliberately pushed her. I think your grandfather is here, Rain Sneed scoffed as they left the court. Yes, JC smiled proudly. After losing her last game, JC was very quiet on the trip home. What's wrong, honey? Bernice finally asked. I miss my dad, JC admitted. Well, Christmas is coming. Why don't you write him a letter? Suggested Bernice. Yes, we can send him that picture of you and your teammates with the city trophy, Melvin enthused. But I want him to come home, JC complained, showing her age and vulnerability. Well, so do I, Bernice admitted. Heavens, he may be your daddy, but don't forget, he's my little boy. Ella did not fit in at San Gabriel. Her beauty made her a target among inmates, and she faced unwanted attention from both male and female guards. Her haughty and ill-tempered attitude did her no favors. In the prison hierarchy, first impressions were crucial, and any sign of weakness was immediately exploited. Her cries of innocence were mocked by the few who spoke to her. But I'm serious, she cried. My foolish husband did this to me. Cupcake, look around you. We're all innocent here, laughed one girl. And most of us are here because some idiot screwed us over, added another. Ella began praying on the first night that the next 10 to 15 years would pass quickly. Shit! I'll be 49 when I get out of here, she thought silently. Kenneth smiled brightly, wanting to cry, as he read his daughter's last letter. The enclosed photograph showed a young girl on the brink of adulthood. He wanted to cry as he looked at the picture, but tears were a sign of weakness, and weaknesses were quickly exploited in Angola. JC stood, dressed in her Clark's drive-in waitress uniform, her long brown hair falling in a mass of curls. A cheeky grin on her face as she balanced a tray of food in one hand. God, baby, you're so beautiful, Kenneth murmured as he looked at the photograph. Again, the tight white t-shirt stretched almost obscenely over JC's 36 double D breasts, and the tight red shorts highlighted her long legs. Her feet were adorned in bright red inline skates, triggering a memory that made Kenneth smile again. He remembered taking JC to a friend's birthday party at a rink in Flowers. 9-year-old JC had been nervous about the party. But what if I fall, she asked. Then you fall, Kenneth said. But I know you. I know you'll fall down and say, so what, and get up and do it again. True to his prediction, JC fell, got up, and tried again. By the end of the party, she begged Kenneth to bring her back the following Saturday. By the end of that course, she was begging for a pair of inline skates for her birthday. Can you skate? Asked John Clark, looking at the pretty 16-year-old girl. Yes, sir, my dad taught me, JC replied proudly. I got mine, see? She said, pulling the skates out of her backpack. John nodded and then looked at the form she had filled out. It says here you're going to St. Thomas Aquinas, right? John asked, trying not to stare at her impressive chest. Yes, sir. I have a 3.8 average, JC said, flashing her beautiful smile. Okay, now, let me tell you how this place works, John said, setting aside his reservations. You mean I got the job? JC asked, breathless with excitement. Well, let's try you out and see how you do, John agreed. John watched through the window as his new employee twirled and pirouetted around the concrete platform. Damn, kid, she's out there playing around, he remarked to Nancy, the head waitress. No, she's not, Nancy said. She's having fun, but I'll bet you $100 she's the biggest tipper tonight. Shit! Yelled John as JC jumped over a wooden bench, dashing back into the restaurant's kitchen. 2 cheeseburgers, one without pickles and the other without onions. Large fries. JC shouted with a squeal as she skidded to a stop in front of the soda fountain and began preparing the drinks. See, Nancy said, she's having fun, but she's not playing. Uh-huh, John replied, still unconvinced. The other waitresses moved out of her way as she zipped past with a tray loaded with orders. If you spill that, John warned as JC skated backward toward a customer's truck, I'll eat it. Nancy smiled as JC turned around at the last second and placed the tray in the truck window without a hitch. John watched, and his skepticism faded when the truck driver held up a hand, stopping her. "Look, I bet she's the biggest tipper," Nancy said, pocketing her $100 from John. Within a month, JC was teaching the other girls to skate with more efficiency, confidence, and flair. Kenneth looked at the photograph again and frowned. He didn't like the bit of tummy the uniform showed, nor did he appreciate his little girl skating around with her bottom in the air due to the shorts. "There's not a hecking thing you can do about it," he sighed bitterly and tucked the photograph away in his Bible. The noise level at Angola was almost deafening, but over time, Kenneth learned to tune it out. He looked around the dimly lit area and sighed. Angola was the last place he imagined he'd end up when this saga began 4 years ago. But here he was, waiting for either death or freedom. Jamal Westinghouse had friends. One of the men in the cell the day Jamal was killed had met one of Jamal's friends and relayed what had happened. So, when Kenneth K. arrived in DeQuincy, Lamont Harrison was waiting for him. Kenneth didn't know why the almost monstrously muscular man had targeted him, but he knew he wasn't going to stand for it. Kenneth sat down and plunged his fork into the unappetizing slop. "This is bullshit," he declared loudly to everyone at the table. He took a bite and grimaced. "I'm not going to eat this shit," he declared, standing up and throwing the tray in Lamont's unsuspecting face. Before Lamont could get to his feet, Kenneth had grabbed his head and given it a merciless twist. "Mr. K," intoned the warden. "Quite remarkable, really. 94 prisoners, and not a single person saw what happened. Like I said, I was standing up and—" Yes, I know, Mr. K. You simply could not eat what we call food, I understand. Let's see if you like Angola food better," sighed the warden. Kenneth looked again at the photograph of his youngest daughter and smiled sadly. He then collected the photograph of his eldest daughter, Jadia, and his 2 sons, both grown men now. After her 3rd pregnancy, Jadia remembered she had a father and called JC for Kenneth's mailing address. Damn, does he have a high school diploma? Kenneth wondered as he attempted to read one of her letters. The penmanship was deplorable, the grammar intolerable, and most words with more than 2 syllables were misspelled. But she sent him letters. She wrote him. And he would sign each one, "I love you and I miss you, Jadia." He looked at the last photograph and grimaced. Jadia was standing in an obscene bikini while Robert and Samuel played in the sand. The picture was unsettling, especially the numerous tattoos she had. Roses adorned her breasts and pelvic region, with vines on her arms and thighs. His mother had told him that when Jadia gave birth to Robert, she started sending him $100 a month, but stopped when she discovered Jadia used the money on tattoos, not food. Robert and Samuel, huh? Kenneth chuckled, knowing Ella must hate it. She must hate being a grandmother, and that her daughter gave her children relatively normal names. Kenneth sat up and began to write a reply to JC's letter. He kept his letters short, knowing long ones would only confuse her. He debated whether it was time to write to Sophia Kutra, his lawyer. "My dearest JC," he scribbled, "I suppose now is as good a time as any to be completely honest with you, Jadia, and Mrs. Sophia Kutra about what really happened that night. He better have at least one parent present at his high school graduation," he thought to himself. Ella Kay barely looked up as she was ushered into the room, barely acknowledging Donald Pellichet's and Sophia Kutra's greetings. "Will I be back in time for dinner?" she finally asked. "That's what we're trying to do here, Mrs. K," Donald smiled brightly. "We're trying to get her home in time for dinner." He looked at the other lawyer. 5 years of prison life had created a mental fog. One day blended into the next, with no hard lines indicating any separation. "What?" she asked. Kenneth K. had confessed. He admitted to willingly setting the fire. "He has cleared you of any involvement," Donald said. "That's what I tried to tell you 5 years ago," Ella hissed, years of bitterness and anger welling up. 5 years, 5 long years, and now you're willing to believe me? Payback's a bitch, isn't it? Kenneth laughed as he was led beside her, heavily chained, guided by 2 armed guards. "Son of a bitch," Ella hissed, venom spilling from her lips. "Mrs. K, please calm down," Donald advised. "You want to look as proper as possible in front of Judge Hill." "To hell with this and to hell with you too," Ella spat. Ella snapped at him. "All rise," intoned the sheriff. Ella glared with stark hatred at Kenneth as he calmly and clearly recounted the details of that night, including Ella's impromptu confession of numerous infidelities and the behavior of her 3 children. So, Mr. K, what you are saying is that Miss K had no knowledge and did not participate in any way, shape, or form in the aggravated arson or the subsequent attempt to defraud Young Insurance? Asked Donald. No, she didn't, Kenneth smiled. And in fact, Mr. Pellichet, there was no attempt to defraud Young Insurance. You can check with them. No claim was ever filed. Hell, I knew there was no way they were going to pay anyway. If I may, counsel, Judge Stephen Hill interjected. Mr. K, why now? Why are you revealing all this now? Honestly, Kenneth replied, I was really thinking about taking this to the grave with me, screwing that slut. For 19 years, I busted my ass for her and her brats. Damn, she knew they weren't mine and laughed in my face about it. But our youngest daughter graduates high school in a few months, and I'd love to be there for that. But I know there's no way in hell that's ever gonna happen. But at least her mother could be there. Very noble of you, Mr. K, Judge Hill said dryly. What now? Asked Ella as Judge Stephen Hill left the courtroom. We now await their decision, Donald said. What? What decision? The son of a bitch told them I had nothing to do with, Ella sputtered. Uh-huh. Now we just have to wait and see if they believe her or not, Sophia said. Remember, he's a convicted felon, Donald added dramatically. All rise, shouted the bailiff, and Judge Stephen Hill returned. Kenneth K. shuddered. The van had no heat. Bastards have a bad habit of making you die when you're around them, Frederick Parr smiled, flashing a gold tooth. Kenneth said nothing. Frederick Parr had a double-barreled 12-gauge shotgun pointed at his chest. Yeah, all sorts of bastards out of the blue, all up and dying and stuff, Frederick continued, smiling broadly. This little white pussy, asked Malcolm Jennings, looking at Kenneth. Hell yeah, don't let that little white boy fool you, the other guard laughed. He's a bad bastard. Hell, even the Muslims leave him alone. Isn't that right? Asked Frederick. Malcolm looked from one guard to the other, and then to Kenneth. So what did you do? He finally asked. Kenneth looked at Malcolm blankly, then shrugged, turned his head, and continued to stare straight ahead. No, you son of a bitch. You know what you've done. Talk to me, Malcolm demanded, certain that the guards were lying just to see if he was gullible enough to believe their bullshit. You'll learn, Kenneth finally said, in a voice barely above a whisper. People who open their mouths don't live that long in Angola. Bastards who know how to keep their mouths shut have it a lot easier. Bitterness was Ella's main companion, and she dutifully carried it everywhere. Martyrdom also accompanied her quite often. Jadia welcomed her mother with a resigned sigh, knowing the cycle of complaints and bitterness would start anew, squeals of excitement and genuine happiness, but she had no room for her. She lived in an efficiency apartment. Jalissa and her girlfriend were in the process of being evicted from another roach-infested apartment when Ella located them, so there was no room for Ella at Jalissa's place either. Ella didn't want to live with Jalissa and Rudy anyway. Rudy was a loud, arrogant, obnoxious Puerto Rican who had several needle marks up and down both arms. JC was still living with Bernice and Melvin while attending school. Oh, no, you can always come to see your daughter, Bernice hastened to assure Ella. No, I wouldn't dream of separating you two. Then where are you staying? That question let Ella know that she had no place in the K household, so Ella asked her mother for help. Oh, great, hecking great, Melissa complained. You barely get rid of your 2 brats, and now you come in needing a place to sleep? Yes, Mother, Ella cried. I'm so sorry, Mother. I just got out of prison, Mother, remember? As soon as I find a job, I'm out of here, okay? Uh-huh. Your 2 brats said the same shit. Still waiting for one of them to get off their asses and get a real job? Melissa scoffed. Malcolm Jennings was sure that Frederick and the other guard had lied. Kenneth was quiet, not confrontational. Ah, yes, grinned Malcolm, squinting at the photograph of JC in her waitress uniform. Screw that bitch, you hear me? Tell her I'll be looking for her in 5 years when I get out of here. You hear me, dog? Kenneth just looked at the smiling boy and shook his head. Screw, I told that kid, didn't I? Asked Frederick to Kenneth, not a wide grin on Frederick's face as he pointed the shotgun at Kenneth. Gee, sir, I don't know what you're talking about. What happened? Asked Kenneth, feigning ignorance. Uh-huh. I found him in the shower with his hecking dick and balls cut off, Frederick said. Oh, that's awful, Kenneth said. God, I hope they catch the terrible person who did this, sir. Cut the crap, Kay. I'm looking for a reason, one damn good reason to pull that damn trigger, Frederick hissed, looking at the expressionless Kenneth K. Ooh-wee! Oh, hey, Snow Bunny, what's your name, huh? Cecil smiled what he hoped was a seductive smile as JC stopped by his car window. Sir, could you turn the music down, please? Asked JC, ignoring the man's question. It's disturbing our other customers. Oh, hey, now, screw it. I'm entitled to hear whatever the screw I want to hear, barked Cecil. Goodbye, JC said, turned and skated away. Mr. John, I asked him to turn down the music and he started swearing at me, JC said. Oh, said John, and pushed open the cafeteria door and headed for the car. John firmly told Cecil that he had two choices, turn off the music or leave. Grumbling and muttering threats, Cecil opted to leave, glaring hatefully at the little white bitch as she skated past to another late arrival. What's the biggest tip you've ever banked? What's the biggest tip you've ever gotten? Asked Terry, a slender blonde, as she smoked a cigarette during a lull. Me? Some guy gave me $10 if I could jump the bench across the street and not drop his hot fudge sundae, JC grinned. One guy offered me $50 if I would give him my dirty panties after my shift, admitted Vanessa, a petite African-American 20-something. Ew, what did you do? JC shrieked. What do you think? I gave him the panties, Vanessa shrugged. Ew, Vanessa, really? JC squealed. What? Vanessa shrugged again. Damn, the most I ever got was $5, Terry admitted. Not for panties, huh? Asked JC, and Terry smiled and shook her head. Oh no, he's back, Vanessa said, as Cecil's loud thumping music could be heard. By the way, what's a snow bunny? Asked JC. A white girl who works for a black pimp, Vanessa said. Why does he keep calling me that? JC wondered aloud, waving her hand through the cafeteria window to get John's attention. Cecil cursed as he saw the strongly built man approaching his car. Dude, look, all I want is something to eat, okay? He barked angrily at John. And I told you, turn that shit off or get out, John yelled back. Good, good. There, happy? Cecil spat, turning off the music. Now send that brown-haired white girl to take my order. No, I'm right here. You can give me your order, John smirked as JC and Vanessa skated by, trying to show off for each other. Cecil watched as the two girls completed their rounds, picking up empty trays and trash from several cars. Sir? Asked John in a loud voice, catching Cecil's attention. Ah, yeah, give me a hamburger with everything on it and a diet sparkling water, Cecil ordered. Chips with that? John asked. Does it come with fries? Cecil inquired. If you pay for them, yes, John replied. Then no, Cecil said. Really, your panties? JC asked again. What do you think he wanted them for? So he could smell them while he was pummeling his carrot? Terry interrupted, laughing out loud at JC's horrified expression. Really? Spat Melissa angrily. Really? You've been looking but you can't find a damn thing, huh? Yes, mother, I have, Ella lied. But to believe this crap, put F on the application and suddenly they don't want to hear shit from you. Then stop putting F in there. Damn, they let you go, didn't they? Melissa said. Yes, but it's still in my file. My lawyer is working to get it removed, but until then, I have to put it in there, Ella said. JC walked warily to her car. It had been a quiet night, and for her, the quiet nights were even more exhausting than the busy ones. At least during the busy nights, she kept moving. Stopping, starting, and stopping again demanded much more of her. Hey, bitch, I need to talk to you. Cecil growled as he walked over to her. Reacting with adrenaline, JC pulled the can of pepper spray out of her bag. Cecil screamed as the noxious spray splashed into his eyes. Blindly, he reached out to slap JC's hand and knocked the can out of her grasp. JC held her thumb over the sprayer, ready to defend herself again if necessary, until Cecil grunted and rolled on the ground in agony, unable to breathe. I called the police. John shouted, brandishing a gun. Go call your grandparents. Let them know you'll be home a little late. Melvin was out of bed and dressed before Bernice hung up the phone. Be careful. Don't go fast, Bernice warned. My granddaughter is in trouble, and all you care about is that I go. Fast, asked Melvin breathlessly. Melvin stood by and listened as Sheriff Dick Davis took everyone's statement. Unfortunately, since nothing had actually happened other than Cecil moving to put his hand on JC, there was little that could be done. So you're saying she has to let him rape her before you can do anything? Asked Melvin angrily to the police officer. No, what I'm saying is that if he had actually laid a hand on her, then we could charge him with something. But obviously, his granddaughter is too quick on the trigger, so Dick explained patiently. To Cecil, Dick said, if you bother her anymore, I'll be on your ass like stink on shit. You know what I'm saying? Cecil didn't answer, just moaned as the paramedic finished rinsing his eyes. It's going to sting for a while, but he should be okay to drive, the paramedic finally said. Yeah, sure. Sounds great, to me, JC said, and then hung up. And how is your mother, dear? Asked Bernice, struggling to keep the disapproval out of her voice. Well, I guess, JC shrugged. He says he wants to take me out to dinner. Graduation celebration, you know? That's nice, Bernice said, trying to sound cheerful. Manny is Mexican. He's hot, JC said, and prepared to leave. Be careful. Have fun. I love you, Bernice said. JC peeked into the living room and smiled. Melvin was lying on the couch, snoring. Pebbles lay on his chest, also snoring. Grandma, bring me the camera, JC whispered. Huh? What? Melvin was startled awake by the camera flash. Sorry, Grandpa, JC smiled. I forgot to turn off the flash. Damn mangy animal. JC, get your ugly cat off me, Melvin complained. Oh, I would, if I had a cat, JC laughed as the man affectionately stroked the cat's belly. With a kiss from Melvin and Pebbles, JC left the house. I hate cats, Melvin muttered as he sat up. I should throw this thing outside. Let the coyotes have it. Yes, the cat looks terrified, smiled Bernice. Now go wash your hands. Dinner is almost ready. Where is JC going? Melvin asked. Dinner. With her mother, Bernice said, saying mother as if it were a vulgarity. Cecil smiled easily. He had crossed paths with Ella, vaguely remembering her. Yes, wait until you see my daughter. You're going to love her. Ella said excitedly as they arrived at Manny's restaurant. Uh-huh. Does she look anything like her mom? Cecil asked, casually grabbing one of Ella's breasts. No, not really. Well, I guess I do, laughed Ella. I mean, give me long brown hair, and I guess you've got her, you know, Ella said. I've probably seen her. She works at that, what's the name of that place? That drive-in. From Clark? Cecil asked. That's it, Ella said, poking him in his muscular chest. Really long curly hair? Asked Cecil, pulling his 9mm out of the car's console compartment. Yeah. Hey, what do you need that for? Ella asked, noticing the gun. You do that, Bunny. Do you understand me? Cecil smiled reassuringly. Shit, you never know what ignorant bastards get into places like this. You know what I'm saying? JC entered the building, saw her mother sitting at a table, and began walking toward her. She hesitated when she saw Cecil sitting next to her mother, smiling devilishly at her. Hello, Mother. What is he doing here? I thought it was going to be just the two of us, JC asked. Well, I was, Ella said, smiling happily, but I kind of ran into him. He's Cecil. He's an old boyfriend of mine, and well, I just kind of thought, you know? Cecil smiled even wider, leaning back so JC could see the butt of his gun. Oh, hi, cried JC, spotting Bobby Corviros, one of the waitresses at Manny's restaurant. Mom, I'll be right back. That girl and I went to school together. She graduated last year. Hi, Bobby, said JC, walking over and giving the surprised Bobby a hug. Call the police, please, she whispered urgently in Bobby's ear. That man at my table has a gun, Bobby asked, as JC smiled broadly. I know, JC said aloud. It's great to see you. Bobby, we don't have time for you playing and chatting with your little friends, Manny ordered his daughter. Oh, okay, sorry. Talk to you later, JC said aloud. Please, she whispered to Bobby. Bobby nodded and ran to the kitchen. Have you ever eaten here? Asked JC as she picked up her menu and glanced at it. Yeah, well, like years ago before your dad decided to screw me and send my ass to jail, JC quietly reminded her mother. And I sure as hell hope he dies there, JC said angrily. So, number 12, have you ever had it? She asked. Ma'am, Officer Eric Green approached. Is there a problem? Yes, officer. That man has a gun, and I know for a fact that he is a convicted felon and is currently awaiting trial for weapons violations, JC said, smiling at a stunned Cecil. Sir, put your hands where I can see them. Stand up slowly, Eric commanded, his hand on the butt of his regulation revolver. Hecking bitch, Cecil spat at her. So, Mom, JC smiled at an ashen Ella. Are you supposed to hang out with other criminals? What? Ella finally stammered. I said, are you supposed to hang out with other criminals since you just got out of jail? JC asked aloud. Really, you hate me that much? Ella snarled at her daughter. Talking about my father like that? Waiting for him to die in jail? Yes, Mother, I think so, JC said, standing up. You know he's not even your father? Ella scoffed and got up at Eric's request. You know what, Mother? JC smiled. It may not be his blood that courses through my veins, but it's his heart that beats in my chest. If I go out, I'll be looking for you, Cecil growled at JC. That's nice, JC smiled sweetly. Officer, you heard him threaten, didn't you? Yes, ma'am, I did, Eric said somberly. Goodbye, Mother. Thank you for dinner, JC said, waving to Bobby. Chapter 5. JC stood up, crossed the stage, and accepted her diploma. She smiled at the three people who cheered for her when they called her name and returned to her seat. After the ceremony, she hugged Jada, Melissa, and Jalissa, thanking them for coming. Like I'm going to miss my granddaughter's graduation to go to college? Melissa yodeled. Where is? JC started to ask Jalissa, then remembered that Rudy had been admitted to hospice last week. Robbie and Sammy? She quickly asked Jada. Eric has them. It's his day off, Jada smiled. Oh no, don't tell me. Did he take them out fishing again? JC grinned. Jalissa began to cough, and JC turned to watch her, deeply concerned. Rudy was in the last stages of AIDS, and Jalissa didn't seem far behind. Finally, teary-eyed, Jalissa ceased her coughing and smiled brightly. Now, who's ready for Red Lobster? Melissa asked with mock glee. There better be. I know there's going to be pizza tonight, laughed Jada. Eric always says he's going to bring home a bunch of fish, and then they come home with all kinds of stories about how they almost caught one. But what did you expect? JC said. He's a lover, not a fisherman. Ooh, I can't wait to use that one on him, Jada laughed. Jalissa, why don't you ride with me? JC asked, placing a loving hand on her sister's arm. Cool, Jalissa smiled, revealing a gap where one of her teeth used to be. JC led them through the parking lot to the old Buick. I can't believe you still have this, laughed Jalissa. I offered it to you, JC reminded her. But Rudy said you'd rather have the 2000, remember? Uh-huh, Jalissa said, losing her smile. Don't even think about the fact that we had that money a whole week before it ran out. JC took off her robe, dropped it and the cap in the trunk of the car, and climbed in. Jessie asked Jalissa as they pulled onto Johnson Street. Yes? I know I've never told you, but I love you, Jalissa said. JC waited for the pitch. The last time Jalissa had told her she loved her, she had followed up with a request for money. When JC refused, Jalissa didn't speak to her sister again for almost a year. The next time she saw her sister, it was at Grandma's funeral. Melvin had been the first to die, a massive heart attack. He died seeing the saints. Bernice had smiled through tears. On 3, JC whispered to the man in the box. 1, 2, 3, go Saints! Bernice followed 3 months later. Complications due to pneumonia, the doctor had said, but JC knew her grandmother had died of a broken heart, too alone without her Melvin to go on. At the funeral, Jalissa and Rudy had the nerve to ask about the will, if there was one. So if there is no will, everything is divided into 3 parts, Rudy had asked. Number 1, JC had shot back. This is not the time or place for such conversations. Number 2, you are not family. You are an interloper, so it is none of your business. And number 3, with the will reading looming, both Jalissa and Rudy stormed out, loudly proclaiming, how dare JC say that Rudy isn't family and call him an outsider? Bitch, I'm more family than you'll ever be, you hear me? Rudy shouted at JC. Jadilla, however, chose not to join them, holding JC's hand tightly. JC smiled, recognizing that while Jadilla was terrified of Rudy, she was courageously choosing to do the right thing. 3 weeks later, at the will reading, Rudy erupted in anger when Sophia Kuchar announced that Jalissa would only receive $10,000. Jadilla nodded in gratitude as she also received a check for $10,000. And to our granddaughter, JC Alice K., Sophia continued. JC, who had a softball scholarship that covered her tuition, never lacked for anything while living with her grandparents. She bought frivolous things with money she earned working at Clark's, while her grandparents provided the essentials. Melvin and Bernice left her the house, 2 cars, and almost $800,000 in CDs, stock certificates, and savings accounts. Jadilla, I don't need all this, JC told her sister. You have 2 children. Take some of this. I'll take Grandma's car, Jadilla replied. Mine is about to fall apart. No, I mean take some of this money, JC insisted. I'll tell you what, JC, Jadilla said. Grandma and Grandpa wanted you to have it. You keep it. If I ever need it, I'll come see you, okay? JC extended the same offer to Jalissa, but Rudy, as always, took control. How much did they leave you? Rudy asked. Rudy, please, this is between me and my sister, JC responded. JC said patiently, this is between your sister Maine and you, Rudy yelled. Finally, JC decided that Grandpa's car was worth $2,000, and since neither Jalissa nor Rudy wanted it, she offered them the blue book value. I'll bring the money tomorrow, JC said, and left the filthy trailer where Jalissa and Rudy lived. Kenneth smiled as he looked at the graduation photograph. God, I do have a beautiful little girl, he said aloud, then put down the photo and read the letter. It saddened him. Ella, whether out of spite or genuine emotion, had told JC that he, Kenneth Allen Kay, was not her real father. I don't care, JC wrote in her long, flowing handwriting. To me, you have always been my dad. You have always been the man I love, and I will continue to call you Dad until the day I die. Jadia had also been told that Kenneth was not her father, but she merely shrugged her shoulders, something that infuriated her mother. Don't you even want to know who your father is? Ella had shrieked. I know who my father is, Jadia said, continuing to mash bananas for the banana nut bread she was making. My father is Kenneth Kay, a man who gave up some of his hopes and dreams in order to provide for his family. Did you know he had a baseball scholarship and that there were a couple of teams scouting him? So, asked Ella, indifferent, Grandpa hated rock and roll, but even he said Dad was really good and probably could have been a big star or something. But he gave up his toys and went off to get a real job, Jadia explained. Jadia continued stirring the sugar in the bowl, saying, he gave up his dreams to be Dad. Tell me, Mother, did you give up anything for us? Did my real father, whoever he is, sacrifice anything for us? Unless he left me $1 million, I don't give a damn who he is. Kenneth put down Jadia's brief, poorly written note and smiled at the photographs it included. His fiancée was a policeman in Bender, Louisiana, and was obviously proud of his uniform. Jadia posed with Eric Green, wearing his police cap, laughing as Eric tried to remove it. The next photo showed her with Robert and Samuel, Robert in a child's police uniform and Samuel in a child's fireman uniform. Kenneth noticed Jadia wore long sleeves in both photos, covering her tattoos. Good girl, he smiled. From his note, Kenneth understood Ella had told Jadia he wasn't her father, but Jadia didn't care. To her, he was her father. Good girl, he said again. Jalissa's letter had been a surprise. Kenneth carefully pulled the 3 sheets from the envelope. Jalissa obviously didn't trust her handwriting. The letter was printed in a bold typeface. Are you afraid my eyes aren't what they used to be? He wondered. Dear Kenneth, the letter began. Despite knowing he wasn't her biological father, it pained him not to be addressed as father, daddy, or papa. So, Mom comes and tells me you are not my father, the letter continued. I am sorry. I can't think of another man I would be prouder to have as a father, it read. Jalissa apologized for her past actions, her disrespect, and her attitude towards him. He let a few tears fall as she revealed she was in a hospice, dying of AIDS. Nobody gave me this shit but me. I stuck that needle in my arm. Not you, not Mom, not Rudy, just me, the letter continued. Kenneth, I know I was a horrible daughter, and you have never been anything but a good and loving father, Jalissa wrote. He smiled brightly. She signed it, with all my love, Jalissa. Kenneth wrote back, Dear Jalissa. Jalissa smiled as the nurse's aide read the letter to her. She was too weak to hold the pages, too weak to lift her head to read the letter herself. Love, Dad, the nurse's aide concluded. Really? Jalissa asked. You signed it with Love, Dad. Here, you can see for yourself, the nurse's aide said, showing her the letter. Again? Jalissa pleaded. Read it again. Okay, smiled the young woman. Show me, Jalissa demanded. Teach you what? Asked Ella. Show me where the job you've been looking for is. If I had been looking for a job, I would have found something by now, Jalissa yelled. No one is hiring, Ella shouted back. Everywhere I go, they just say, thanks, we'll be in touch, and that's it. Have you been to Babbage's? Have you tried that new place? What the hell is it in 52? Jalissa asked. I told you they see F on the application and don't bother reading the rest. Damn, quit feeling sorry for yourself. Fill out the application and ask for a job, huh? Jalissa walked into the kitchen and said, and let me guess, now you expect me to cook your dinner too, huh? Ella lifted her plump body off the couch and followed her. No, I'll fix it. What do we have? Ella asked. You've been here all day, and you haven't once looked to see what we have. Jalissa's anger was quite evident. Ella quickly prepared the ground turkey, then slapped a plate in front of her mother before fixing her own. After dinner, both women returned to the living room to watch television. Jalissa purposely chose a program she knew Ella would hate, a primetime investigative report. At your house, you can watch whatever you want. At my house, we watch what I want. Jalissa smiled and turned up the volume. Kenneth harbored no hope as he entered the garishly lit room. Once again, he faced the three people Louisiana had chosen to evaluate him and his chances for a life outside the penal system. He silently assessed the two awkward-looking men and the unattractive woman. Even in her 60s, the woman sported the long hair of her youth and used the outdated slang of the Woodstock era. Kenneth provided elaborate answers to their questions, adding as much hype as possible, knowing his chances of discharge were slim. There were 3 unexplained deaths in his file, 6 if he counted those he didn't disclose. But it gave him a certain morbid satisfaction to play Petey the Pious for them. Well, sir, he said, turning to one of the men, my mother and father died, and they wouldn't let me go to their funerals. So the first thing I'd do is visit their graves. You know, my middle daughter has AIDS. I found out yesterday she doesn't have much time left, so I'd like to see her. Say goodbye. And I have 2 grandsons. I'd like to see them. The woman almost smiled, nodding her head, buying his story. But Kenneth knew the 2 bureaucrats in ill-fitting suits would overrule her. Well, sir, the mattress factory? I really don't know if they'd take me back. I mean, what's it been? 9 years? Kenneth shook his head. God, I don't even know what jobs are available. I'm 48 now. I guess janitor or something like that is the best I could hope for, huh? For nearly an hour, Kenneth answered their questions, fighting the urge to tell the 3 evaluators what they could do with their papers. Thank you, Mr. K, one of the men finally said, leading him out of the room. Sure as shit, hope you get out of here. It's unhealthy and shitty to have your ass around here, Frederick Parr said, not smiling. You and I both know there's not a chance in hell they'll let me out, Kenneth replied. So don't waste your breath wishing for it, he said, walking down the dimly lit hallways. JC took a moment to compose herself, picked up her laptop case, and JC picked up her purse and Alina fully stepped out of the car. Through the smoked glass doors of Young Insurance, she observed a bored-looking woman behind the desk. Her blouse was provocatively tight, with 3 buttons undone, revealing a lacy red bra, and her tattoos were prominently visible through the sheer fabric. JC felt a sense of relief that Jadia had come to her for money to remove some of her tattoos. Not the flowers, Jadia had smiled. Eric likes to eat in the garden. Too much information, JC had laughed. How much do you need? JC offered a warm smile to the receptionist, who looked up, did a double take, then smiled back. Hello, can I help you? Asked Michelle Ruiz. Yes, I'm JCK. I'm here to see Elizabeth Baggett. Miss Baggett? Michelle pressed a button. Yes? A metallic voice responded. JCK is here to see you, Michelle announced. Please send her back, the voice instructed. Down that hallway, first door on the right, Michelle pointed with a long, brightly painted fingernail. Thank you, JC said, following the directions. She walked into the office and was taken aback by the resemblance. Her twin was sitting on the other side of the table. Elizabeth Baggett had long, dark, curly hair, deep brown eyes, an upturned nose, and full, luscious lips. She had a square face with a strong jawline, fairly large breasts, a slim waist, and slightly rounded hips. When she reached out to take JC's hand, they both stood about 5 feet 6 inches tall. Thomas Aquinas, JC said, smiling even wider. I remember. Everyone was always asking if you were my big sister. I can see why, Elizabeth smiled more broadly, but I'm sorry. I don't remember. There's no reason you should have, laughed JC. I was a lowly 8th grader when you were a senior. Go Avengers, smiled Elizabeth, and let me see. You're here. I'm sure you hear it 100 times a day. I'm looking for a job. I just graduated from ULL with a degree in business administration, 3.92 GPA, JC said, pulling out her resume. Have it here, Elizabeth said, taking a seat again. I printed out the email you sent me. There was another girl people always asked if we were sisters. Said JC, taking a seat. Madison Marcoloni, asked Elizabeth. Yes, people always used to confuse us, although I had very short hair back then and she had very long straight hair. Yes, that's right, Madison, smiled JC. Okay, now let's see, Elizabeth said, picking up JC's resume. You worked at Clark's for 6 years? That's impressive. Seriously, I see some resumes with 10, 15 jobs listed and I'm like, why would I hire you? You're going to quit in a month or two, you know? What can I say? I loved working at Clark's, JC admitted. But I didn't put myself through 4 years of college to skate in shorts in the winter, you know? Oh, I know who you are, Elizabeth laughed. Wow, you're the girl who jumps those benches out front. Yes, that's me, laughed JC. Have you ever wiped yourself? Asked Elizabeth. A couple of times. One time I had a bunch of ice cream and I didn't put one of them all the way in and I could feel it slipping and I tried to correct it. I ended up spilling them all over the place. JC smiled. The guys felt so bad for me that they got out of the car and cleaned it all up before I came back with the replacement ice cream. They tipped me $20. Well, I'm afraid it's going to be a bit boring around here, Elizabeth smiled. No, ma'am, JC smiled. There's a skate park at Flowers. It's mostly for skateboarders, but I go there and show them what a girl can do. And on Sundays, I race motocross. Believe me, I don't miss a thing. Motocross? Asked Elizabeth with wide eyes. JC had discovered her dad's motocross trophies and had begged Melvin to tell her about her dad's motorcycle racing days. Then they learned that a race would be held at Jack's Creek, and JC begged Melvin to take her to see it. The sun had been scorching, the track dusty, the food stands had run out of soda and bottled water, the noise level was deafening, and JC had loved it. Here's class 125, Melvin had said. That's the class your dad ran in. I used to call them the animal class. A bunch of dumbass kids don't have enough sense to know they could get hurt out there. JC watched as the 14 boys milled around the track for 3 laps, kicking, clawing, and screaming as they jockeyed for position. Oh my God, JC yelled when a biker barely missed landing on top of another biker after taking the highest jump at high speed. I'm going to do it, JC told her grandfather firmly as they drove home that scorching Sunday. Melvin looked at the sunburned girl and nodded. He knew he wasn't going to dissuade her and that her grandmother wasn't going to like it, but he wasn't going to dissuade JC either. At first, he tried to get her an old Honda 100. The 14-year-old girl looked at the bike and then looked at Melvin in disgust. Where are the flowers in the basket? She asked. I mean, really, if you're going to buy me a girl's bicycle, you might as well buy all the stuff for her, eh? So he relented and bought her a 1998 Yamaha YZ25. Yeah, he's a little older, he said. It's perfect, JC said, then set to work to help her grandfather take it apart. They drilled the piston, put a sleeve on the exhaust, bought wider handlebars, bought lighter tires, and waited for the next Sunday to arrive. That was my daughter. I wouldn't let her run in that class, the man said as they enrolled JC. Well, that's why she's not your daughter, Melvin had said firmly. Her first race, 9 boys and her, was a disaster as far as JC was concerned. After 2 heats, she finished 4th. What? Asked Melvin incredulously as a sobbing JC helped him load the bike onto the trailer. Why are you crying? It was your first race. You beat 6 guys. Did you see any of them cry? But I wanted to win, cried JC. Honey, we all want to win, Melvin said, hugging her tightly. Next time, okay? Next time you'll do better, okay? Kenneth was a bit disturbed when he received a photograph of a smiling JC holding her second-place trophy. And would you have listened to us if we had told you not to run? Wrote Bernice. Oh, wait, we told you not to run, and you still did. He felt a lump in his throat when he saw the picture of her racing, his little girl, his baby, in the middle of the bikes, fighting for first place. My God, she wrote to her father. I had no idea how terrifying it must have seemed to you to see me doing all that. And we survived, Melvin wrote. And we will survive now. Melvin sent the photographs of JC's first triumph, and Kenneth was horrified. It had rained almost non-stop the day before. The track was pure slop by the time the class of 125 lined up at the gate. The The boy to JC's left, Bobby Orino, had a sneaky habit of crowding people on the outside of the turn. The first turn was to the left, which meant he would push her. So when he lowered the gate, it slanted to the left, forcing Bobby to come to an almost complete stop. Mud splattered his face, chest, and legs. JC was grateful for the stupid glasses her grandfather had made her wear and the mouthguard her grandmother insisted on. "We've spent too much money on that mouth of yours to let a rock break your teeth," Bernice had complained. "I don't care if it looks stupid. You wear the guard." At the end of the first lap, JC had to frantically wipe her glasses to see. By the second lap, she was in the lead and didn't have to wipe the mud off her glasses. When no one throws mud in your face, you don't have to wipe the mud off your glasses, she thought with a smile. "You cut me!" Bobby accused heatedly as JC wiped his muddy face. "You poor thing," JC scoffed in her little girl voice. "Watch your ass next time, bitch," Bobby snapped at her, then shrieked as Melvin grabbed him and lifted him off his feet by his shirt. "Apologize for calling her bitch, or I'll knock all your teeth out of that smart mouth of yours, punk," Melvin hissed. In the next heat, Bobby tried to corner her, but JC stood her ground, and it was Bobby who conceded first. "A fucking girl?" bellowed Robert Orino to his son. "You let a fucking girl beat you? Come on, you fucking sissy. We're going home and putting this bike up for sale. Behave yourself and goddamn it, I'm paying all this money for you to let a fucking girl beat you." Kenneth was surprised at how dirty JC looked standing there, holding her first-place trophy. The next photograph showed her unzipping her leather jacket, revealing a completely soaked and dirty jumper. Another photo showed her dressed in just socks, bra, and panties, with all the skin showing brown with mud. And in all the photographs, JC's dirty face was beaming with absolute joy. "Are you still running?" asked Elizabeth. "Yes, I don't race in the 125 category anymore. I have a YZ250 now," smiled JC. "Isn't that dangerous?" asked Elizabeth. JC held back the sarcastic response. She was trying to get a job. "Well, that's why we wear protective gear," JC explained. "When's the next race?" asked Elizabeth. "Sunday at Turkey Creek," smiled JC. "Do you want to go?" Elizabeth looked up sharply. Was it written all over her face? Could people tell just by looking at her that she was in a lesbian relationship? But JC wasn't giving off any obvious signals, just a warm, sincere smile. "I don't know," Elizabeth relaxed. "I have a 2-year-old. He might not like that much noise." "Little kids?" JC chuckled. "Most of them love all that racket." Michelle chose that inopportune moment to interrupt her supervisor. Elizabeth had inherited the sullen, unprofessional Michelle from the previous branch manager and had fined her twice. Michelle's see-through blouse and too-short skirt, in Elizabeth's opinion, were the last straw. But Michelle sealed her fate by sending one of Grant Johnson's clients to Elizabeth's office instead of Grant's, simply because the man seemed angry. Michelle didn't like Elizabeth and had a habit of sending all difficult clients to her supervisor's office out of spite. "You're not Grant," the man growled after slamming open Elizabeth's door. "Second door on the left," Elizabeth told him calmly. "Then why did that dumb bitch tell me the first door on the right?" the man bellowed, slamming Elizabeth's door shut. "One last question, Miss K," Elizabeth asked, her anger evident. "Do you have any visible tattoos?" "Just one, but it's only visible if I take off my bra," JC admitted quietly. She pointed to her left breast. "It's a flaming heart, and it says, 'I heart my daddy' inside," JC said, blushing hotly. "That's cute," Elizabeth smiled. "I don't have one myself, but if I ever got one, that's what mine would say." "I mean, my dad is like the most wonderful man in the world," JC continued. "The most wonderful man in the world, next to my dad," Elizabeth interrupted. "No," said JC in her breathy little girl voice. "Uh-huh," said Elizabeth, standing up. She reached out and squeezed JC's hand tightly. "Miss K, I am currently looking for a new receptionist with the possibility of promotion in the future. Are you interested?" asked Elizabeth. "Yes, ma'am," JC smiled brightly. "I'm sorry you have to learn as you go." "I highly doubt Michelle will be willing to help you much when I fire her," said Elizabeth. "Could you wait in the dining room? It's the last door on the left." "Yes, ma'am." JC smiled and walked to the designated room. Meanwhile, Jadia looked at Eric and fought the urge to burst into tears. "Well?" asked Eric, increasingly uncomfortable in the silence. "Honey, yes, you know I want to marry you." God, I love you so much, sighed Jadiah. So what's the problem? He asked, fighting back anger. God, I know it's stupid, but I'd like my dad to walk me down the aisle, said Jadiah, a small sob catching in her throat. Any chance he'll get paroled or something? I don't know. I should ask JC. She knows about all that stuff. Jadiah sighed again. She cupped his face in her small hands and looked deep into his eyes. Please believe me. I love you. I'm so in love with you. I can't wait to be Mrs. Eric Green. But oh, damn it. I'm probably pretty stupid. But I keep hoping that the longer I wait, maybe my dad will come home, admitted Jadiah. JC walked into her house. The house was quiet, but it was always quiet without Melvin, Bernice, and Pebbles. She had thought about getting another cat after Pebbles' death, but it felt like betraying her sweet, loving, faithful companion. So she didn't do it. She sighed gratefully as she slipped her shoes off her feet. Her first day at her new job had been fun, exciting, and even a little nerve-wracking. Elizabeth had tried to help her settle in, offering tips and advice and making her feel welcomed. The house, though silent, felt like a sanctuary, a place where she could unwind and reflect on her new beginning. Elizabeth had tried her best to help JC settle into her new role, but there were some aspects of the phone system that only Michelle knew about. And Michelle wasn't there to show JC. The former employee had grabbed her personal items from the desk, dropped the keys in one fell swoop, and left the building in tears. JC took her shoes into the bedroom, shoved them in the wardrobe, took off all her clothes, and put on her dad's old baseball jersey. She was thankful that her grandma had never thrown Dad's things away after he got married and moved out. Meanwhile, Ella was outside the bargain shop, feeling a mix of disdain and desperation. So far, the 5 people she'd seen leave and the 2 families she'd seen enter seemed inferior to her, worthy of her scorn. But her mother had made it pretty clear, either find a job or find somewhere else to live. Jadiah, living with her fiancé in a rather nice caravan, had hesitated before finally daring to tell her mother there was no place for her. I put a roof over your head, too, Ella had growled at her eldest daughter. No, you didn't, Jadiah had shouted back. Dad did. You had nothing to do with it. And JC, that stuck-up little bitch living alone in that huge house, had smiled sweetly and said in that breathy, annoyed whisper, no, and slammed the door in her mother's face. She hadn't even invited her in, just opened the door and stared at her for a long moment. Can I help you? JC asked. Can I help with what? Ella had blurted out. Is that how you greet your mother? Your own mother? Well, I thought it was a little nicer than, what the fuck do you want, you evil narcissistic bitch, JC had said. Ella stared at her youngest daughter, still a child at 21, and finally blurted out that she needed a place to live. No, JC said and closed the door. Ella heard the lock click. Defeated and frustrated, she finally got up, climbed into Melissa's barely moving car, and drove to the bargain bin. At the entrance, a sign announced they were hiring. She plucked up her courage, opened the door, and entered the large building. Hello, welcome to the bargain bin, a young woman greeted her. Is there anything in particular I can help you find? A job, Ella admitted. Oh, you're in luck, the young woman smiled broadly. We're bursting at the seams here. If you can walk and chew gum at the same time, you're hired. Even if I have a felony on my record, asked Ella, her voice wavering slightly. Yeah, I have a felony on mine too, admitted Mindy Laporte. 2, actually. Possession with intent to distribute Schedule II narcotics and attempted murder in the 2nd degree, plus a couple of convictions for prostitution. Alina doesn't give a damn about that as long as you show up, do your job, and don't try to rip us off. She turned and waved to a large woman who was talking to a customer. Large sizes over there. Buy 3 and take 20% off the 4th item of equal or lesser price. Okay, Mindy, said Alina, looking over. She's looking for a job, but she's worried because she's got a felony on her record, Mindy explained, then smiled brightly as 3 high school boys walked in. Oh yeah, Alina shrugged. Me too. He even has tattoos to prove it. St. Gabriel, the women's prison. Ella felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief. Here she was, in a bargain shop, finding solidarity among other women who had fallen on hard times. She nodded, realizing that maybe this place, this humble bargain bin, was a step toward rebuilding her life. And for the first time in a long while, Ella allowed herself to hope. Me too. St. Gabriel's turned 5 for an arson I didn't do, Ella said, her voice laced with frustration. Like playing with matches? Asked Alina, hiding her smirk. No, I didn't do it, Ella replied firmly. Okay, come with me, said Alina, leading the way to the back of the shop. Here, fill this out. Find yourself an apron under that cupboard. Go around the shop and get familiar with where things are, then get to work, Alina said, handing Ella a single-page application. And we need to hurry. Jake hasn't been in, so we're a bit short-staffed. Short of what? Asked Ella, concerned. Just helping people, showing them where things are, and then, when we close at 9, helping clean up. In the meantime, if you see something on the floor, pick it up and put it where it belongs, Alina instructed, then left Ella to fill out the application. Great, Ella muttered, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. She filled out the application, found a bargain bin apron, and began exploring the shop. The layout was fairly straightforward. Baby and children's clothes were at the front right of the shop. The older children's section was in the middle on the right, and the men's section at the back. On the left, the small and youth sizes were at the front, followed by the clearance racks in the center, and the plus-size section at the back. The middle of the shop held all the regular women's clothing. Oh, this is nice, she commented, as she picked up a top that had slipped off a hanger. The clerks have 40% off sale items and 10% off regular items, Mindy said cheerfully as she passed by with armloads of various tops. JC indulged in her favorite pastime, looking through the photo albums Melvin and Bernice had collected of her father. Kenneth had been an only child, so there were several photographs of him taken over the years. She smiled fondly as she looked at the photographs of his childhood. Sipping her one glass of wine, JC turned her attention to her teenage years, looking again at the photograph of her prom. The smiling girl with her handsome dad was a mystery to her. It was the only photograph of the dark-haired girl. Melvin and Bernice had admitted that they couldn't remember the woman's name, and she didn't appear in any of Dad's high school yearbooks. Photographs of his baseball glory days saddened her. He could have been so much more than just a clerk in a mattress factory, but he had done what he thought was the right thing and married her mother. She looked at the wedding album and smiled with satisfaction at Ella's white dress. The noise in Angola never stops, even at night. It's just a different kind of noise. Kenneth lay awake, not listening to the cacophony going on around him. Jalissa had succumbed to AIDS. Both JC and Jadia had sent him letters informing him of her death. JC had written that the nurse's aide had told her that her letter was Jalissa's favorite. Jalissa insisted that the nurse's aide read it to her every day. So I read it to her one more time, JC wrote. It made me cry. Your words were so beautiful. I love you, Dad, I love you, Kenneth said aloud. Amid the echo of screams, laughter, moans, and booms, no one heard his words. My God, he wrote to his father. I had no idea how terrifying it must have seemed to you to see me doing all that. And we survived, Melvin wrote back. And we will survive now, Melvin wrote back, sending photographs of JC's first triumph. Kenneth was horrified. It had rained almost non-stop the day before, turning the track into pure slop by the time the class of 125 lined up at the gate. The boy to JC's left, Bobby Orono, was known for his sneaky habit of crowding people on the outside of the turn. The first turn was to the left, which meant he would push her. So when the gate dropped, JC slanted to the left, forcing Bobby to come to an almost complete stop. Mud splattered on his face, chest, and legs. JC was grateful for the sturdy glasses her grandfather had made her wear and the mouthguard her grandmother insisted on. We've spent too much money on that mouth of yours to let a rock break your teeth, Berenice had complained. I don't care if it looks stupid, you're wearing the protection. At the end of the first lap, JC had to frantically clean her glasses to see. By the second lap, she was already in the lead and didn't have to clean her glasses anymore. When no one throws mud in your face, you don't have to wipe the mud off your glasses, she thought triumphantly. You cut me, Bobby accused hotly as JC wiped her muddy face. Poor thing, JC mocked in her girlish voice. Watch your ass next time, bitch, Bobby snapped, then screamed when Melvin grabbed him and lifted him off his feet by his shirt. Apologize for calling her a bitch, or I'll knock all your teeth out of that smart mouth of yours, punk, Melvin hissed. In the next heat, Bobby tried to corner her, but JC stood her ground, and it was Bobby who conceded the turn. "A damn girl?" Robert Orino bellowed at his son. "You let a damn girl beat you? Come on, you fucking sissy. We're going home and putting this bike up for sale. Behave yourself, and damn it, I'm paying all this money for you to let a girl beat you." Kenneth was stunned at how dirty JC looked in the photographs, standing there, holding her first-place trophy with a beaming smile. The next photograph showed her unzipping her leather jacket, revealing a completely soaked and dirty jumper. Another photo showed her dressed in just socks, bra, and panties, with every inch of her skin covered in mud. In all the photographs, JC's face was beaming with absolute joy. Despite the chaos in the mud, her spirit shone through. Kenneth couldn't help but feel a swell of pride and fear at the same time. His little girl was fearless, determined, and unstoppable. "And we survived," Melvin had written. "And we will keep surviving, no matter what comes our way. This money for you to let a damn girl beat you." Kenneth was shocked at how dirty JC looked as she stood there holding her first-place trophy. The next photo showed her unzipping her leather jacket, revealing a completely soaked and dirty sweater. The following photo captured her in just socks, a bra, and panties, with every inch of visible skin covered in mud. And in all the photographs, JC's dirty face was beaming with absolute joy. "Are you still racing?" Elizabeth asked, intrigued by JC's story. "Yes, but I don't compete in Class 125 anymore. I have a YZ250 now," JC replied with a proud smile. "Isn't that dangerous?" Elizabeth asked, her concern evident. JC held back a sarcastic response, reminding herself that she was trying to get a job. "Well, that's why we wear protective gear," JC explained patiently. "When is the next race?" Elizabeth inquired. "Sunday at Turkey Creek," JC answered with a smile. "Do you want to go?" Elizabeth looked up sharply. Did she have it written on her face? Did people realize just by looking at her that she was in a lesbian relationship? But JC wasn't giving off any obvious signs, just a warm, sincere smile. "I don't know," Elizabeth finally relaxed. "I have a 2-year-old. He might not like so much noise." "Small children?" JC laughed. "Most of them love all that racket. It's like a big adventure for them." Elizabeth smiled, feeling a bit more at ease. The thought of her son enjoying the excitement of the race appealed to her. "Maybe," she said thoughtfully. "I'll think about it." "Great," JC said, her enthusiasm infectious. "It's going to be a fun day, and who knows, your little one might just fall in love with motocross too." Elizabeth chuckled, the tension easing from her shoulders. She found herself genuinely liking JC and appreciating her positive energy. It was rare to meet someone so passionate and full of life, and Elizabeth felt a spark of excitement she hadn't felt in a long time. Michelle chose that inopportune moment to interrupt her supervisor. Elizabeth had inherited the sullen and unprofessional Michelle from the previous branch manager and had fined her twice. Michelle's see-through blouse and too short skirt, in Elizabeth's opinion, were the last straw. But Michelle sealed her fate by sending one of Grant Johnson's clients to Elizabeth's office instead of Grant's, simply because the man seemed angry. Michelle didn't like Elizabeth, and she had a habit of sending all difficult clients to her supervisor's office out of spite. "You're not Grant," the man growled after throwing open Elizabeth's door. "Second door on the left," Elizabeth told him calmly. "Then why did that dumb bitch tell me the first door was on the right?" The man bellowed, slamming Elizabeth's door shut. Elizabeth took a deep breath, trying to keep her composure. "One last question, Miss K," Elizabeth asked, her annoyance evident. "Do you have any visible tattoos?" "Only one, but it's only visible if I take off my bra," JC admitted quietly. He pointed to his left breast. "It's a heart on fire, and it says, 'I heart my daddy' on the inside," JC said, blushing hotly. "How nice," Elizabeth smiled, genuinely intrigued. "I don't have one, but if I ever got one made, that's what I'd put mine on. I mean, my dad is like the most wonderful man in the world, but my mom never loved him, and," JC continued. "The most wonderful man in the world, next to my dad," Elizabeth interrupted, her tone softening. "No," JC said in her breathy little girl voice. "Uh-huh," Elizabeth said, and stood up. She reached out and squeezed JC's hand tightly. "Miss K, I am looking for a new receptionist with the possibility of promotion in the future. Are you interested?" Elizabeth asked. JC smiled happily. I'm sorry you have to learn the ropes in such a chaotic environment, Elizabeth added, feeling a sense of camaraderie with the young woman. I highly doubt Michelle will be willing to help you much when she fires her, Elizabeth said. Could you wait in the dining room? It's the last door on the left. Yes, ma'am. JC smiled and headed toward the dining room, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Jadia looked at Eric and fought the urge to burst into tears. The weight of unspoken words hung heavily between them. So, Eric started, growing increasingly uncomfortable in the silence. Honey, yes, you know I want to marry you, God. I love you so much, Jadia sighed, her emotions swirling. So what is the problem? Eric asked, sensing her inner turmoil and fighting back his own frustration. Oh, God, I know it's so stupid, but I'd really like my dad to walk me down the aisle, you know? Jadia said, a small sob catching in her throat. The thought of her father missing such a pivotal moment in her life was heart-wrenching. Is there any chance of him getting parole or something? Eric asked, his voice tinged with hope and concern. I don't know, Jadia replied, feeling a pang of helplessness. I should ask JC, she keeps up with all that stuff. Eric sighed again, trying to comfort her. He took her face in his hands and looked deeply into her eyes. Please believe me, I love you. I'm so in love with you, I can't wait to be Mrs. Eric Green. But oh, damn, I'm probably pretty stupid, but I keep waiting. The longer I wait, maybe my dad comes home, you know? Jadia admitted, her voice cracking with vulnerability. JC entered her house, feeling the quiet envelop her. It was always so quiet without Melvin, Bernice, and Pebbles. She had thought about getting another cat after Pebbles passed away, but she felt like she would be betraying her sweet, loving, and faithful companion, so she didn't do it. She sighed gratefully as she took off her shoes, feeling the weight of the day lift off her shoulders. Her first day at her new job had been fun, exciting, and even a little stressful. Elizabeth had tried to help, but there were some aspects of the phone system that only Michelle knew, and Michelle wasn't there to show JC. She grabbed some takeout menus, contemplating what to eat, and reflected on the day's whirlwind of events, hoping tomorrow would be just as fulfilling, minus the chaos. Michelle gathered her personal items from her desk, slammed the keys down with frustration, and stormed out of the building in tears. JC took her shoes into her room, neatly placing them in the closet. She then stripped off her work clothes and slipped into her dad's old baseball jersey. She felt a sense of comfort, grateful that her grandma had kept all of her dad's belongings after he got married and moved away. Outside the bargain bin, Ella watched people come and go. She felt a mixture of disdain and resignation. Her mother had made it clear, find a job or find a new place to live. Jadia, now living with her fiancé in a cozy caravan, had reluctantly told their mother that there was no room for her. I put a roof over your head, too, Ella had started to say, glaring at her eldest daughter. No, you didn't, Jadia snapped back. Dad did. You had nothing to do with it. And then there was JC, that stuck-up little brat who lived alone in a huge house. She had smiled sweetly and in that infuriatingly calm voice said, no, before slamming the door in her mother's face. She hadn't even invited Ella in. Instead, she had simply opened the door, stared at her for a long moment, and asked, Can I help you? Can I help? What? Ella had sputtered, taken aback. Is this how you greet your mother? Your own mother? Well, I thought that was a little nicer than what the fuck do you want, you evil, narcissistic bitch? JC had retorted. Ella stared at her youngest daughter, still so young at 21, and finally stammered that she needed a place to live. No, JC had said, and closed the door. Ella heard the lock click shut. She finally woke up, got into Melissa's barely functional car, and drove to the bargain bin. The sign out front said they were hiring. She gathered her courage, opened the door, and entered the large building. Hello, welcome to the bargain bin, a young woman greeted her. Anything in particular I can help you find? A job, Ella admitted, swallowing her pride. Oh, you're in luck, the young woman smiled widely. If you can walk and chew gum at the same time, you're hired. Even if I have a felony on my record, Ella asked hesitantly. I have a felony too, Mindy Laporte admitted. 2, actually. Possession with intent to distribute Schedule II narcotics and attempted second-degree murder, plus a couple of solicitation charges. Alina, I don't give a damn about that as long as you show up, do your job, and don't try to scam us, Mindy said. She then turned to greet a large woman who was talking to a customer. Plus sizes right there. Buy 3, get 20% off the 4th item of equal or lower price, right, Alina? She's looking for a job, but she's worried because she has a felony on her record, Mindy explained, and then smiled brightly when 3 high school boys walked in. Yeah, me too, Alina shrugged. You even have the tattoos to prove it. St. Gabriel? You? Ella asked, surprised. Me too, Alina nodded. Did 5 years for an arson I didn't commit, Ella said. Do you like playing with matches? Alina asked, hiding her smile. No, I didn't, Ella replied. Okay, come with me, Alina said, leading Ella towards the back of the store. Here, fill this out. Look under that cabinet for an apron. Walk around the store and figure out where things are. Then get to work, Alina instructed, offering Ella a glimmer of hope amidst her chaotic life. Alina handed Ella a single-page application with a knowing smile. And a bit of a rush, huh? She remarked. Jake didn't show up, so we're short-handed, Alina explained, rolling her eyes. Being busy doing what? Ella asked, a tinge of worry in her voice. We just help people, show them where things are. Then when we close at 9, we help clean up. Meanwhile, you see something on the floor, pick it up and put it back, Alina said, giving Ella a quick rundown before hurrying off. Ella sighed, a mix of relief and sadness in her heart. Great, she muttered to herself as she started filling out the application. Once done, she found a bargain bin apron and looked around the store, taking in the layout. Baby and children's clothing were at the front right of the store. Older boys' clothes were in the middle right, with the men's section at the back right. The petite and junior sizes were in the front left, followed by the clearance shelves in the middle left, and the plus-size section in the back left. The center of the store housed the regular women's clothing. Oh, this is cute, Ella commented, picking up a blouse that had fallen off a hanger. Employees get 40% off non-sale items and 10% off sale items, Mindy said cheerfully as she hurried past, her arms laden with several blouses. Meanwhile, JC indulged in her favorite pastime, flipping through the photo albums Melvin and Bernice had collected of her dad. Kenneth had been an only child, so there were many photographs of him over the years. JC smiled fondly at the childhood pictures of her father. Taking a sip from her glass of wine, she looked back at her teenage years and her senior graduation photo. The smiling girl with her handsome dad seemed like a distant memory. It was the only photograph of the dark-haired girl, a mystery to her. Melvin and Bernice had admitted that they didn't remember the woman's name, and she wasn't in any of her dad's high school yearbooks. The photos from his baseball glory days filled JC with a mix of pride and sadness. Her dad could have been so much more than a mattress factory employee, but he had done what he thought was right and married her mother. JC looked at the wedding album and smiled at the picture of Ella in her white dress. The noise in Angola never stopped, not even at night. Kenneth lay awake, lost in his thoughts. Jalissa had succumbed to AIDS, and both JC and Jadia had sent him letters informing him of her death. JC had written that the nursing assistant told her that Jalissa's favorite letter was from her. Jalissa insisted that the assistant read it to her every day. So I read it to him one more time, JC had written. He made me cry. Your words were so beautiful. I love you, Dad, I love you, Kenneth said out loud to himself. Amidst the echoes of screams, laughter, moans, and metallic noises, no one heard his words.